When I start with either a coat or a popover, the first things that I need to put on are the pockets. So the popover gets one pocket, and I go back and forth whether I want it on the right or the left. It's meant to be asymmetrical, so I pin it on and then attach it to the front of the garment. So now I'm going to stitch the pocket on. I do 2 lines of stitching, sort of like you see on a jeans pocket, just to make sure that it's strong enough for anything you might put in it. After doing the pocket, I then stitch the shoulder seams. After adding the arm, I then sew the long seam from the bottom of the garment up through the armpit and then along the sleeve. I do this, of course, on both sides. It's fun just to try it on for size at this point. I still need to add the collar. I use a sweatshirt ribbing, a 1x1 ribbing that I piece around the neckline. The ribbing is cut in a smaller circumference than the neckline because the point is to stretch it around the neckline so that it gathers in like a sweatshirt might. Therefore, I use the Wonder Clips to clip it all into place, and then as I slowly sew around, I'm also making sure that I am stretching the ribbing to meet the circumference of the sweatshirt. I am a firm believer in finished seams, so at this point I go around the neckline with the serger very, very carefully. This is a super fast machine, and I serge the sweatshirt and the ribbing in place, again, as slowly as possible. I going to stitch down the serged edge so that it's not irritating against your neck. Now that the popover is done, I'm going to start sewing the caddies. This involves for each caddy aligning the quilt piece and the handles. Everything has been cut to size already. I begin by clipping the handles into place on the quilt piece, and then I put the lining piece on top of that. I'm making sure also that my handles are not twisted and that they're centered on the quilt piece. And I stitch them together here at about a 3/8 seam allowance. I do this to both sides, and then I do this on the remaining 3 caddies that I have got already cut out. Once that's done, I fold the lining and the quilt piece in on themselves, matching them in the middle, and then stitch up the side at about a 3/8 to a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I also leave a gap on the lining of about 4 inches or so that I can turn the bag right side out. So now I open the corners of the bags to create triangles. The seam that I just sewed is in the center of that triangle, and I sew across at about a 2.5 to 3 inch depth. I do this on all 4 sides, the 2 quilt pieces and then the 2 lining pieces. Once I've sewn all those triangle corners, I then clip them off. I leave about a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I clip off all 4 triangles. When I have thicker quilts, I also trim a little bit of the seam allowance along the side where the lining and the quilt meets. At this point, I turn the bag right side out using the small hole that I had left in the lining. Sometimes I need to make it a little bit bigger, so I'll just snip a stitch or 2. Once I've got the bag right side out, I fold the seam allowance in on itself and stitch up the hole that I left in the lining. With the lining pressed into the inside of the bag, I am now going to top stitch around the outer or the upper edge of the bag, making sure that the handles are not in the way and do not get sewn down. And then I just go around at about 1/8 inch seam allowance. After the top stitching, it's time to sew in the label. I place the label between the handles and just stitch it down on all 4 sides. Next up are the zip pouches, which have a lining and obviously a zipper. I begin by opening the zipper up, placing it along the long edge of the quilt piece, and then sandwiching that zipper with a piece of the lining. Stitch the zipper in place. and then I top stitch it down from the right side. I then repeat that entire process on the other side. Now I sew along the perimeter of the entire piece, starting at about 2/3 of the way down on the lining. I sew to each corner, pivot, turn, and then sew the next side. I'm using about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I do leave a gap of about 4 inches in the middle of the lining piece so that I can turn the entire bag right side out. I box the corners of the zip pouch the same way I did with the Maker Caddies. After the 4 corners are boxed, I cut the triangles, and also I do trim the seam allowance along the side where the lining and the quilt piece meet. I then turn the entire pouch right side out through the small hole in the lining. I then close the opening in the lining. The last piece to make are the coin purses. I think I have 4 of those. These just involve a small scrap of quilt plus the 6-inch zipper. After stitching in the zipper, I then top stitch it, and then I repeat the process with the other short end of the piece and the other side of the zipper. I fold the piece right side together and then stitch it to the right side of the zipper. I then turn the piece inside out and top stitch the zipper down. Small pieces can be hard to sew. This part is a little persnickety, but just stick with it and you will get it done. I now shift the zipper so that it's about 1/3 of the way down, and then I stitch the 2 open sides. I now snip off the ends of the zippers and any remaining threads and turn the pouch inside out.